So welcome everybody. If you are just joining, we're just going to give it a moment or two to let everybody get logged in and get ready, and then we'll be starting the webinar. My name's Kim Ellis and I'm from the Learning Network. I'm going to be joined by Dan Nathan from Powtoon and Nick Shackleton-Jones, and we have a very exciting introduction video, a bit off from what we usually do. So I'm going to be playing that in just a moment. Just going to give it another minute or two, make sure that everybody is logged on successfully and that can hear us and everything. Make sure that during the webinar that if you have any questions, any comments, anything that you want to say, that you put in it in the chat panel. I will be monitoring the chat panel, and if there's any questions that are cropping up, I may pose them to Dan and Nick. I may save them for the Q&A at the end, but we'll try and get through as many things as possible. So at the moment I'm in sunny, well, it's not sunny Yorkshire. It was sunny this morning, but it's raining and miserable. So just bob into chat, say hi, where you're from and what the weather's like. Costa del Slough, love it, Sophie. Okay, so we've given it a couple of minutes. And let's get going.
Hi, my name's Kim Ellis, and I'm the Community Engagement Director for the Learning Network. The Learning Network is there to support and help people within the world of L&D. We offer a whole host of benefits for our members, such as webinars, a regular coffee morning, a Slack channel, and mentoring.
I'm Nick Shackleton-Jones, CEO at Shackleton Consulting and author of How People Learn. And I help organizations that want to improve employee experience and performance.
Hi, my name's Daniel Nathan, Head of Customer Success at Powtoon. Powtoon is the world's leading video creation platform for training professionals.
Hope you enjoyed that. Like I said, we wanted something a little bit different, seeing as it's Powtoon. So we've got three exciting topics that we're going to be going through today. And the first one is how to engage a disengaged workforce. So that's like a hot topic at the moment. The next one is why video storytelling makes a deeper impact. And the third one is why engage your people with shorter forms of learning. I know I've been lost in the TikTok rabbit hole quite a few times. So that's what we're going to be going through today. I am going to make it, like I said, I'm going to try to make it interactive as possible for you. Get chat happy. We've also got a few polls, so get involved in the polling as well. And then, like I said, there's a Q&A at the end with Dan and Nick. So the first one, how to engage a disengaged workforce. Let's get the poll going. Hang on, stop sharing. Sorry, technical issue. First poll of the day, how to engage your workforce. So are you currently struggling to engage with your entire workforce? Yes, sometimes. No, everybody's engaged. Okay, just give it another moment and then we will share the answers. Okay, let's have a look at the results. So we've got yes, it's 32%. Sometimes is 59%, and no, everyone's engaged is 8%. That's very interesting. What do you guys think, Nick and Dan?
Well, personally, I mean, I've worked in lots of organizations where engaging the workforce has been a challenge and everybody's sort of gone at it with varying degrees of success. And I can talk about some of the things that I think are more successful, but Dan, first, what do you think and what have you seen?
Well, I think, yeah, it is absolutely a challenge, and clearly true employee engagement can lead to lots of benefits in an organization, be it staff retention, be it productivity, be it performance. I think if you're, as an organization, perhaps struggling Often you're struggling because you don't know where to start when it comes to employee engagement. Everyone's talking about you need to engage, you need to use video, of course, to engage with your employees. But I would say, generally speaking, what we find from our clients is they start with the basics. Okay. Think about how you may want to incorporate video, right, with employee engagement. You can use it across their employee entire life cycle, be it onboarding, be it HR, all the way through to L&D training, all the way through to offboarding. I would start with the basics, and I would focus, and I would advise our clients to focus on onboarding, on client onboarding, on employee onboarding, because once you focus your engagement efforts at least on their onboarding, you will find that they're going to quickly adopt the culture and the values of your organization. They'll feel more connected as they start their journey with your organization. So often when, as I say, when clients or new clients are coming to Powtoon and they're wondering, how do we get started? We would always advise, try and focus first and foremost on employee onboarding and focus your engagement efforts there if you're looking to start out.
That's good advice. I'm going to link to that actually, because I think there's a secret weapon in the war for employee engagement, which is talk to them. And almost nobody's ever done that. We sort of sit, and I've sat in sort of HR teams who cook up all manner of schemes, to boost employee engagement, tinker with a holiday program. But one of the most productive things I think I ever did was actually talk to employees about what would engage them. And I do think it's important for the reasons you outlined, Dan, because it's about productivity. We know there's a link there. It's also about retention. And I think lots of organizations, if you're training people, but seeing them leave in a few months' time, that's money down the drain. So what can you do? I think when I talk to people, we did this in one of the professional services firm. We actually got groups of people together and asked them about engagement. You'll be surprised what you hear. One of the things that came top of the list was dress down days. And you might think, well, that seems trivial. But actually, it's a chance for people to be themselves at work, to come to work and to connect kind of more authentically with the people around them, because they sort of feel that they can be themselves. And so talking to people is a good technique. I think we're struggling with it much more at the moment, because actually being together gives people a way to connect more immediately than I think just sort of sitting remotely. And I think leaders are going to have to pick up some of the slack. So I think that's another area where if you have a bad leader, it rains for you every day. So actually building the sorts of skills that leaders need, not just to manage projects. I think too many leaders are just managing projects, not really supporting people. That is a big deal. And last but not least, just linking back something Dan said, onboarding is interesting. I talk to lots of people as part of focus groups looking at onboarding. And you're right, Dan, that it can make such a big difference. One of the analysts that we had said, I didn't know what to wear. She said, I bought 2 weeks worth of clothes and I never wore them all. And so sort of short videos where people sort of get a sense of what it's like in the organization. They get answers to the simple questions that they have. People tell stories about their own success. Those can be very powerful. We produced a lot of those to kind of help people onboard and maintain levels of engagement. Otherwise, what happens through onboarding is they onboard and they're excited and immediately it dips. And there goes your productivity and engagement.
Thank you both very much. Andy Walton has just posted in the comments, poor completion rates and lack of feedback can really, disengage your workforce. So I know you mentioned, around doing, little videos, onboarding, that kind of thing. What other steps can we take to really get people engaged?
Well, that's really interesting, because that's a different sense of engagement, but a really important one. So I'm glad you raised it, which is like engagement in learning. And people will tell you in your organizations they don't have time to learn, which is rubbish. What they're actually telling you is your product is rubbish. If people weren't buying your product in any other context, you say, oh, maybe there's something wrong with what we're selling. But we have a tendency, I think, in learning to sort of blame it on the learner. People are learning every day in 1,001 ways via Google, YouTube, and so on. Typically, if they tell you they haven't got time for learning, what they're really saying is it's just not relevant to the job. I just see it as a distraction. It's an imposition. And actually, there's 2 ways you can remedy that, both of which involve talking to people. It's to build a content strategy where what you're producing is either super useful and helpful. So that's why people go to Google and YouTube, and you'll only achieve that by talking to people actually really finding out what they're struggling with, and then you can build useful stuff. If you build useless stuff, they won't use it. Don't be surprised. And the other end of the scale is you can build super exciting stuff, and you won't know what's super exciting to people again unless you talk to them. But as an example, people quite like to hear from peers, stories of what their peers are doing. We completely rebuilt an induction program and stripped out all the senior talking heads, and actually had just people's colleagues saying, this is my life, this is what I do, this is what I care about, these are some of the challenges I face. It's really quite engaging for people. So yes, engagement in learning, I think, suffers from content dumping. If you're dumping content, people won't engage. It's not really their fault.
And then, of course, to just follow up from what Nick said, Nick made a very good point about saying, often I suppose the stereotypical answer is I don't have time to learn, and I guess we'll be talking about it very shortly. Well, it depends on how you're teaching and how you're training your workforce. Of course, will determine how engaged they are with the training material and how they perceive it. So, of course, if your training is very much document based, text based, possibly even classroom based, often it'll be met with a degree of negativity, right? Because people generally don't want to learn. They don't want to be made to feel like they're back in school, they're back in a classroom. So and we'll be touching this off shortly in terms of video.
Why don't we just talk like normal people? I mean, yes, I mean, we say people don't want to learn because it makes them feel like they're back in school. I think those are two different things. Kim mentioned TikTok at the outset. It's a learning platform. You may not recognize it in such because you're thinking that a learning platform needs to look like an education platform, but actually people love going there, and I love going there, and I learn all kinds of things. I learned that you could poach an egg in a microwave. You put it in some water, spin the water, give it 2 minutes, and it's a combination. Yeah, did you try it? Did it work?
My third one did.
Okay. So it's a combination of really exciting, kind of wow, surprising, funny, kind of sort of sometimes shocking stuff. I learned that, for example, from TikTok, that in South Africa, the last referendum was in 1992, and it was on apartheid. And if you were black, you weren't allowed to vote. I didn't learn that in school. I learned it because a black comedian was making that point. And so it's either really exciting or engaging, or it's really useful stuff on the other end of the TikTok scale. So people have lots of time for learning. They love to learn if you give them a system which actually addresses the things that they care about.
I know that we're talking about learning and focusing on the learning aspect of engaging the workforce, but if as a company you're not engaging your workforce from the outset in every aspect, then how are they going to suddenly engage in learning? It doesn't just start with learning. It doesn't just start with L&D, coming into the training room, webinars, whatever. It starts right from the beginning. Like you say, it starts with onboarding all the way to offboarding. They've got to be engaged with every part of their role, every part of the job, every part of the company, and really become advocates.
What's worked for you, Kim? What have you found personally has been the most engaging thing a company has done?
So I've worked in a lot of different places that have tried a lot of different initiatives. One thing that really got people engaged with like an annual engagement survey was actually saying to people, you get 10 minutes off the phone. This was in a call center. So saying you get 10 minutes off the phone, here's a Kit Kat, have a break, go and fill in the survey. Everybody on the call center floor did the survey because they got the incentives to engage with the engagement survey. So, and it worked so well. When I'm in a training room, if I'm doing some face-to-face, then obviously sunny personality and sweets. So, they know that they're getting fed if they're coming into my training room. And then people are excited to come in, depending on what the training course is.
See, I'd like them to be excited to be on the course because of the learning, not because of the sweets. But I think sweets is a step in the right direction.
Yeah. I mean, it does depend on what you're training and who your audience is, because if they're being told to go on a training course, told to watch a video, told to complete an e-learning, they have no choice in the matter. They sometimes won't engage with it as fully as if they had chosen.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And electives, I think, is an important part of a good solution where people can choose things that are relevant to them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Sometimes elective training is not an option. Certain organizations, such as those working in environmental health and safety, data, regarding data protection, software and things like that. Often elective training is not an option, and there is compulsory training, as there is in a lot of government, a lot of public sector working as well. But there is there is obviously, I consider, a better way simply to engage, and you both alluded to it regarding now. TikTok is a nice example, Nick. The reason, you were talking about how you learn how to boil an egg in a microwave using TikTok. Now, the great thing about things like TikTok, as silly as it sounds, it is learning, but your mind, of course, does not associate it as learning, because it's a fun, it's a small short video that you can watch at your leisure. And one trend that we're seeing a lot at Powtoon is on more sort of convenient methods of engagement, of training. And I know we're going to allude to it a little bit later, but if you just consider TikTok for the time being, okay, today's Gen Z, Gen X, who are going to be tomorrow's workforce, this is what they're being brought up on. This is what they've adopted into their lifestyle. So everyone who is currently, let's say, going through school, going through university, who are going to be the workforces of the future, their method of engagement is going to be by these very small, sharp, convenient, easily digestible methods of training. This is what they're going to expect when they come to your organization and you want to absorb them into the workforce. So
there's a trick.
There's definitely something on that.
There's a trick there. It's not the duration. You said short, sharp, and I think some people get the wrong impression that the future is about making things shorter. Actually, people are binge watching stuff on Netflix, so they'll quite happily sit their way through 8 hours. So it's not about attention spans, it's about relevance. They will binge watch something for 8 hours on Netflix because they're really excited by it and interested by it. If what you do is you take, a big 1 hour course and chop it into, 1 minute pieces, it will just be, instead of one horrible 40-minute section, it will be 40 horrible 1 minute sections, and it won't do anything for you. I'll give you a real life example of how to turn that around. When I was working in BP, we had a guy called Hans Vaziri, who was an expert in sand management. He was leaving the organization. We were told, do knowledge capture, do your thing. And I think Hans thought that he was going to deliver his standard 8-hour lecture and we would film it. And if you had 8 hours to watch it on your mobile device, well, knock your socks off. We didn't do that. We talked to all the people who had been on his program in the last 2 years. And we said, give us your top 10 questions for Hans. And we sorted them. And then we asked him 100 questions and he had 5 minutes on each. So it's not just that you made things shorter, it's actually that you have spun the perspective. You've actually addressed the things that the audience care about, rather than just pushing the same old content out that they don't, because the format's not going to save you.
Yeah. So I think that segues us nicely into our next poll. So I'm just going to open this one up.
Yeah, while we were talking about that, Caleb said, I don't think we should accept there are no electives. I worked in BP, and obviously we had to segment stuff that was mandatory and stuff that was elective. So I do think that, that kind of blend is right. So there will be things that people have to complete, and then there will be other things where, they have a choice. Yes, the negative school, only negative for person over negative school. Problem with that, though, is that many of the people who go into training and development had a positive experience at school. And so they can't quite understand why everybody else isn't loving it. So that can sometimes become a problem. And it is why, the lecture format perpetuates. There's a guy called Eric Mazur, if you're interested, who's done a lot of work on the effectiveness of lectures. It's atrociously ineffective. So anything that looks like that, people standing in classrooms with, bullet points or e-learning equivalents of that, is terribly ineffective. Research suggests, but, people will carry on with that, and academics, even sort of professors of education, will continue to lecture. It's sort of bizarre.
Okay, let's share the results. So we have one person who is not using video currently, and we have 42 people, 98% of the respondents saying that they do use video to enhance their learning. I know for me, I've been using video in one form or another for 10, 15 years, something like that. They were not that great at the beginning, not going to lie. But I mean, there's different types of video. So there's your information videos, there's your click demo instructional videos, there's your how-to videos for a process, that kind of thing. There's many different ways to create video content to enhance learning. How can you add stories to help engage people?
Do you want to go first, Dan? Or I'm happy to go first.
Yeah, Nick, go for it.
So I think stories are so important. There's a anthropologist, Kate Fox, reckons we spend upwards of 2/3 of our time just gossiping, sharing stories. You know, we come into the office on a Monday morning and say, how was the weekend? Storytelling. I went to see the, Doctor Strange at the cinema, another piece of storytelling. They're tremendously important because they're basically the default way in which human beings encode information about the world. There's a couple of psychologists, Barrow and Clark, who way back in the 1970s found that if you could convert unrelated words into a story, it increased memory for that information sevenfold. It's probably one of the biggest effects in cognitive psychology. And I spent quite a lot of my career. One of the most successful projects we ever did actually early on was the Sales Academy, where instead of producing e-learning modules, I chased around the organization, Siemens Communications, on a monthly basis with a hapless band of renegade filmmakers, filming all the most successful salespeople. It was like TikTok. People loved it because they loved to see their peers, see what they were doing, have a bit of a laugh. But somehow we descended in the direction of using video in a sort of educational way, like, bits of lectures, which is a terrible thing to do. But there's sort of two ends of the spectrum that work so much better than the lecture. One is sort of storytelling, as you say, because it makes things more memorable, makes it stick, brings things to life. It communicates, we did a lot of storytelling around D&I actually in BP, and it's so much better to capture a story from somebody who's been excluded and how bad that felt, or been included and how great that felt. So much more powerful than just another bullet point module. And the other end of the spectrum, obviously, is if you're trying to do something, if you're trying to fix your washing machine, for example, really practical videos. That's the other end. Those are really good for people. So
yeah,
that would be the answer.
I mean, and storytelling is a technique that's been used, for decades now, particularly with marketing as well. You're trying to sell a product. This is the problem you've got. This is our solution. This is how it's going to improve your life. But the great thing about storytelling in training, and it goes back to what I was saying before about my sort of perception of people not necessarily wanting to be made to feel like they're back in school and learning again, is storytelling just is a great way of allowing the learner to absorb information without overwhelming them, right? Without overwhelming them with information. It helps them retain information for a longer period of time. And as Nick said, it's going to allow your learners to be able to remember factual information when it's expressed through the context of a memorable story.
Yeah, really interesting comments in the comments as well. Jane, using story cubes with their boys, very powerful skill for leaders. I don't know, if some of you will have been on leader or design leadership programs. Storytelling actually is a great way to connect the organizational purpose to what people are experiencing every day. So it can help build kind of engagement if you're part of a powerful story in an organization. So at the BBC, the powerful story is we're trying to be the most creative organization in the world, and that's why the Director General said people would get out of bed, come to work, because that was driving them. So stories can be an organizing kind of principle for people. They can connect different people. They can span sort of differences, as I said, with the sort of inclusivity example, and they can tell people in the case of incidents or compliance, why you shouldn't do things. I work for an organization where a story that will never leave my head was that they had a director who stole a bike light, and it was captured on the security cameras. It's just a little thing, probably only a couple of quid, but he obviously didn't realize that that they had a camera. Very highly paid individual, earned a lot of money for the business, and the question was, what were they going to do? And the answer was that they fired him. And that sort of a story around zero tolerance is very powerful. There was a similar story, actually, obviously at the BBC, many of you are aware of. Jeremy Clarkson, punched a lowly runner, And that was a franchise that earned an enormous amount of money for the business. But the BBC did the right thing. You know, it served as an example for other people. So stories make up a culture, and they can really change a culture as well.
And how about creating that emotional impact? Because at the heart of a story, there has to be an emotion, whether that's an emotion that you want to get out of the listener or the reader, or the emotion of the characters that's in there. What's the best way to create that emotion?
Well, that's a difficult one, but absolutely, emotional attachment to a message is hugely important. The thing about emotion is if you manage to create emotion in your messaging, the information that is being taught essentially becomes that much more memorable. I'm interested, Nick, on your takes on how you create emotion in video storytelling, for example.
Yeah, I'm just replying to comments to that effect. How do you do it? Well, don't fake it. I interviewed all of the exec team at BP. It was a career risking moment because they'd all been auto cued before that. And I said, no, you're not going to have an auto cue. I want to feel how you get to the real person. So just whether you're creating learning videos, I know it's tough because I've done it myself, training videos, or just get people to talk unscripted, to talk about how they really feel about things. I think it's a much more powerful way to kind of connect and tell powerful stories, like the couple of examples I shared. You know, leaders who've done transformational things, people in the organization who need to be celebrated, tell their stories. One of the stories I remember from BP, Gemma Patterson captured it actually on film for us, was the first female leader in the biofuels business in South America. And she cried as she talked about how good that felt, you know, and it was an extraordinary story, and it changed lots of us.
There is one sort of tactic that, or I guess strategy that a lot of organizations try to adopt in order to create emotion is to involve themselves in what's called peer-to-peer learning, right? Where you don't have just the training professionals, the L&D departments creating content. It's pretty standard run-of-the-mill stuff. Often what you can do is you can involve the other colleagues. You can involve colleagues, peers, essentially, to contribute to the learning, to learning content, to internal communication content, because that might offer a little more credibility and also potentially an emotional attachment. So, for example, we have a client, Facebook, and as part of their onboarding campaigns, what they do is they have different members of their the HR team, different members of design, of engineering, who create very short what do you call it? Face to camera videos, right? Talking heads videos, very short. They record it on their phone and they upload it into. I think they use Workplace for Facebook, and it forms part of welcome videos, onboarding videos. When people join Powtoon, they say, "Oh, hi, this is Miranda from HR," and they'll talk a little bit about her background and welcome to the company. That in itself, that strategy in itself offers so much more. So much more of an emotional involvement and emotional attachment because you're listening to, you're learning from real life examples, real life situations, colleagues, peers, which can offer a huge amount of credibility to the information that you're learning.
Yeah, I think that's really true in a number of kind of contexts. But you mentioned onboarding earlier, Dan, and actually that was one of the things that I did in my last organization, Deloitte, because when we talk to people on that program, it's really important to have senior people there. But actually, they also want to hear from their peers, on sort of how things really are. It's a very different dynamic. It feels much more like school when you've got a senior partner standing up and saying, "Let me tell you how it is." But if you've been how it is at school, it's actually the people in the classroom, your peers, actually tremendously influential as well. So we shifted the mix and had much more, as you say, Dan, kind of peer input to those, and much more informal kind of storytelling.
Sindhu asked a question earlier. I'm not sure if you've seen it. How do you include storytelling for technical content? Now, I know how I've done it before, but how would you guys do it?
Great question. I guess I've interviewed safety experts on, what are some of the common mistakes that they see. I guess I've seen it a little bit in contact centers. I did some work in contact centers where people would tell stories about what happened in a customer exchange, and those would be used as part of the training, and that helped because they were real. And sometimes, obviously, as you know, they record them, So you can actually play them out and sort of stop and say, well, what's going on here? What should the person do next? And you can sort of see how it plays out. So, stories are used just on their own as stories, but also can form the basis of scenarios. We built a program for the BBC actually called Legal Online. And a lot of it was based on real scenarios, legal scenarios that journalists would sort of encounter. And I think that brought it to life for people. But importantly as well, they could see the consequences, see how things played out. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, well, I mean, actually, storytelling in a technical sense is probably as important within a technical sense as anything else, because especially when it's technical content or technical training, it can be very difficult and complex. So breaking them down into stories, into storytelling, is a great way to help absorb this technical information faster. So it's hugely important, I believe, to incorporate storytelling in any type of technical based training.
There is something about that, which is that stories are good when you're pushing significance, but when you already care about something, you don't need a story. Let's just be clear on that. So if I'm trying to fix my washing machine, I do not need Google to serve up a story about Phil, who had a similar problem, his backstory, where he grew up as a kid. I just need the answer. So it's important to recognize that dynamic in the mix, which is that you're trying to make somebody care about something. And as learning professionals, that's often the case. You want them to care about diversity or data protection or safety or technical procedures, and they don't care, then telling a story can have that impact. But if you know that somebody does care, then a checklist or just a quick guide can be what people want. So the secret is to get the mix right, I think.
Yeah, I think everything does have its place, and it's like e-learning. You wouldn't do a full e-learning course on how to change a light bulb. You might do a 30-second video. So, and you wouldn't have a story because it wouldn't need it.
E-learning 30-second light bulb.
I'm sure somebody will have one out there. Okay, so let's jump on to our third poll. So this is long versus short. So long videos versus short videos. Are you considering them in your content strategy? Are you considering both? Are you swinging one to the other? Oh, we've got lots of answers in here at the minute. Just going to give it another few seconds. Get your answers in, everybody. Okay, right, here we go. So yes, we're considering both. Got 51%, no is 21%, and maybe is 28%. So what's the difference? First off, what is the difference between long and short form learning content?
That's a very good question. I don't think there's any say long or short answer. I don't think there's any true answer on that. You may consider bite-sized videos between I would say 3 to 3 minutes potentially. Anything longer than that, I would probably consider long content. We've got a few answers here. Christy's saying short content for her is 2 to 3 minutes, maximum 15 minutes. So it'd be interesting, Nick, to hear your take on that.
Yeah, I think I'm going to say something similar actually, which is if I spend 3 hours watching Game of Thrones, is that long form? I guess we're going to say yes. If I spend 3 hours scrolling through TikTok, is that long form? You say no, and it's because of the way I guess it's sort of chunked up. Why do people chunk things up into smaller pieces? Typically it's because they want that integration into the flow of work. That's often the ambition. And the problem is if you've got something that's long, you're going to have to stop work, to consume it. So historically, that was how I think traditionally a lot of training was. You'd go away for 2 days, but we're trying to kind of help people at points of need. That's been one of the things that I've driven, certainly with the kind of resources, not courses mantra. And if it's a point, if it gets easier to ask the person sitting next to you, then you're going to ask the person sitting next to you. If you've got a problem and there's just a better way to figure it out, you'll use that, you'll use Google or whatever. So I think that's really what's driving short form, is a desire to make things both accessible, but the best way to get an answer quickly. by comparison to other things. And that can vary, depending on what it is you're training. So I think we have, shortening of content, but I wouldn't say there's a kind of a dividing line between long form and short form. I think it's more about utility at point of need.
There's a quote that I can't remember who told me about this years ago, and it's content should be as long as it has to be, but as short as it can be. Because if you take the changing a light bulb, if you can do the video in 30 seconds, why do a 5-minute video on changing a light bulb? So, it does depend on what the content is, what the topic is, and also what outcome I think that you want to get out of it, that you want your learner to take away. What about incorporating video into virtual training course? So you've already, let's say, got a 60-minute training course and you want to include 3 5-minute videos. How would be the best way to do that?
Well, for me, what we find is, first of all, if you want to include, first of all, you should be using video, I believe, to stir up excitement and engagement for the upcoming training course. Whether it's a case of awareness, making people aware that there's this course happening. You can use a short video. I won't say bite size. I'll just call it short video to make everyone, to set out the agenda, to set out what they're going to get from this course. And also, video can also be used, again, short form video can be used to summarize the key aspects, the key takeaways of that course as well. If people need to refer back to what they learn or elements of that course, having a short form video as a summary of the course is also very useful as well. And this is something that we're seeing happen more and more.
Oh, Nick, you're on mute. It had to happen at some point.
Sorry,
I know we've been doing
that.
it a couple of years, but it had to happen.
I was just reading away all the comments, fascinating on, what people consider to be long form, short form preferences over kind of animated. Yeah. I think the answer to the questions is often sort of take it back to the audience. I think sometimes things go wrong and we'll know this because sometimes we feel like order takers, a senior stakeholder says, I want it this way. And there's an opportunity there to say, well, can we talk to the consumers and actually find out what they will prefer, and it will vary. Your question though, Kim, was how do you use it as part of the course? I think I've made great use. It served me well in a number of contexts. Video destination postcards is going to be the answer to your question, because I can spend a lot of time talking about stuff like human-centered design or whatever, but quite often people forget all of that. It's just me rabbiting on, and what they remember is something that I show them. I say, well, you could do this instead. So you could show them a digital platform, or you could show them the design of a program. And so video can be very powerful at showing people a destination that they leave thinking, yeah, I want to go there. So you might go to learning technologies, for example. You might forget almost everything somebody said, but you might think, oh, they showed this video of this thing, and I thought, I think we should do something similar. So that can be a really effective use of video. And I've also used it outside of the learning context to get buy-in for what we do. When we redesigned the Deloitte induction program, we created a lovely kind of 1-minute sort of wrap of how people felt about that, what it looked like, and so on. And we showed that, to everybody up to the level of the exec. And we got a lot more buy-in because people could see that we were really making a difference. We were doing something interesting and innovative, and other people wanted to copy it. So it's also a very useful way of kind of marketing what you do in learning as well.
So what about if you have an hour-long video that you need to get across to the organization? Is it best to have an hour-long video, or is it best to say, let's just do it into 10 6-minute sessions?
Personally, I would go with the shorter options. This is my personal preference, and also what a lot of people I speak to as well have that. Again, it depends on the audience, as Nick alluded to before. If someone's passionate and there's huge engagement already within the topic, then there's every likelihood that an hour long video can be consumed quite easily. I prefer the shorter version. I think, and Nick also said this before, just the accessibility of shorter videos, or just the convenience of being able to go from one episode to episode, go from one piece of content to the other at your leisure, so to speak, whether it's in work, whether you're on the tube on the way home, whatever the case may be. It's just easier to consume shorter content. And Miles is saying here, an hour-long video needs to be really good. Almost, sorry, the office lights keep going off in my office. An hour-long video, because there's no movement from me. I need to wave. An hour-long video needs to be really good. Most TV programs aren't that long. So Miles is alluding to television programs that are not even hour-long now due to the same reasons.
Good to hear you, from you, Miles. I think I was thinking something very similar, not surprisingly, perhaps. It's like I went to see the Batman movie recently, and a couple of hours into that, I was thinking, God, how much more of this is there? And I mean, their budget was through the roof. So if you think you're going to hold people's attention with what you do in learning for an hour, you might be disappointed. But you could counter that. You could say, well, hang on, Nick. People will sit and watch TikTok for an hour. What's going on there? Because that's lo-fi, low budget. Well, yes, but it's about the variety, but it's also about the algorithm's ability to spot what interests you, and people obviously just kind of swipe on. So you could say, well, we could create an hour-long video which would be really engaging, with lots of different people in an organization talking about sharing their stories, their part of the world, what they're doing. Yeah, might be quite good. But then why would you bolt them all together into an hour? Why would you not create a library of kind of stories, so that a little bit like TikTok, people could click on the ones that are interesting? So yes, I'm sort of horrified at the prospect of an hour-long learning video.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I had to transcribe an hour-long video, and it would have been so much easier if it was just little snippets with a summarizing statement. I mean, when we talk, let me take us back to the onboarding that we were talking about. One of the great things that Powtoon can help with is the let's get to know me kind of thing, and the introductory videos that you can create in Powtoon. Now, if you ask somebody to create a video, about themselves, to introduce themselves to a team or something like that, you could say to them, you've got an hour. You've got an hour to do it. But really, they don't need that. It's, 90 seconds, short, sharp, simple, boom, done. Everybody knows how you like to be addressed. Everybody knows what you're interested in, if you've got, any pets or anything like that. So like we said earlier, it needs any videos that we create, no matter what the platform, what the topic, what the story, what the audience is, they need to make sure that first of all, that they're engaging. Nobody wants a boring video, and that they are to the point, that we're not going off on tangents, that we're not waffling, that it's not longer than it needs to be. And Powtoon can really, really help with that, because the way that the development system is laid out, it allows you to see how things are chunked, which we're going to get into in a moment. So I'm just going to share
just on that point, before you share your screen, actually, Kim,
yes.
Deloitte did something very similar for working with teams that needed to come together very rapidly. They had a template, Manual of Me. It was a one-page template, had little boxes, and everybody working on the new team could fill in, when they like to work, so we could manage flexible working sensitively, what they're good at, what they're weaker at, things to know about me, something a bit personal as well, where appropriate. And so that worked quite well, as a document. And I could imagine something similar working quite well as a video, so that people know what to cover in the sections, as you say, Kim.
On Kim's point, just regarding onboarding, it might be a manager or a peer, someone introducing themselves on video. Using short, sharp 90-second video clips is great. The other benefit of using this type of visual style, like a face to camera, for example, is you require next to no, the presentation value doesn't need to be so high. No one's expecting to see perfectly shot, perfectly framed videos. It doesn't need to be high definition. Well, it doesn't need to be almost iPhones and everything are high definition, but the presentation value doesn't need to be super high. Therefore, the time invested in creating these short, sharp, welcome videos face to camera is very low. You need to sort of very low demand on your time as well, but in my opinion, highly effective and engaging. So that's also a benefit of using these short videos.
Exactly. Right. So let's.
Kashish, can I just say, Kashish has just made the perfect point here that I've just raised. Minimum lovable product over perfection. So it's a great point, Kashish.
Yes, it's got to be good enough to get the job done, because you'll never achieve perfection. I keep telling myself that, because every time I go back to a video I've edited, I'm like, I could change this, I could change that. It just needs to be good enough to do the job. Okay, so let's have a look at a real life example. This is one of the Powtoon clients. I'm going to drop this into the chat with also a couple of other examples for you to have a look at later. So as you can see, that is a 1.5 minute video. It's not pausing. Right, so as you can see, that's a 1.5 minute video. What makes that video so engaging, Dan?
Sorry, Kim, was that I didn't hear that question. Sorry if that was for me.
So what makes that video so engaging? So for you as a person from Powtoon, what would you say are the main elements for that video?
Well, a number of things. I'll throw one or two. First of all, the music. The music is a joyful, positive soundtrack that instantly sort of perked my interest. And I would also say the fact that you're, in my opinion, here using animated characters. You're using characters to sort of be representative of the workforce. It helps to display and showcase the culture and the diversity of the organization as well, which it picks up on that a lot.
Thank you very much. So I'm just going to jump over to. Oh, it's playing again. Sorry, guys. So we're just going to look at another example. I'm just going to play this down at the bottom. We have a bit of a competition for you. So I'm going to bob into chat modeling. So we have here this example that's playing at the bottom. I'm going to actually pause that so you're not listening to it and listening to the music. So we've got this example. This is an introductory video that you could use, like we said before, for your onboarding. There's also this. There's a link to the example, there's a link to the sign up link, and also there's a prize for the winner if you want to create something and send it through to marketing@powtoon.com. There is a prize for the winner. I'm not sure what the prize is, but I'm sure it'll be fabulous. So that pretty much brings us towards the end of the webinar. So I've got some questions that I got from earlier. So we're just going to have a couple of minutes for a Q&A. If you've got any other questions that you would like to ask our panelists, please bob them in the chat. But to get us going, so Kirsty said, do you prefer animated videos or recorded real people videos? She finds that there is higher engagement with animated content. I would say we see different results depending really on the organization and depending on the audience that they're trying to engage with. There is no, in my opinion, there's no hard and fast rule. A lot of people will say, well, potentially at certain organizations, animations don't work for us. They're not our style, they're not our brand, they're not part of the image that we're trying to display, yet they'll find that it's the best way of engaging with their peers and with their employees. Personally, I'm a huge fan of both. I err on the side of real video, believe it or not. It's something that I'm very passionate about. I've spoken about it a few times of being able to harness very raw
right? Very raw sort of face to camera videos, which I think is super engaging, real life. They display the passion. They display the passion and as I say, the raw, real life characters that you have working for you, which sometimes can be difficult to portray with animation. So there is no hard and fast rule. It really depends. I've been looking at the comments and people have been talking about using both, and some have preference over the others. But I would say it really depends on your organization and what you think that would engage best or speak best with your audience.
A real story. Back at BP, myself and a guy called Professor Roger Shank were interviewing safety experts to try and get them to convey, I guess, the importance of safety. And off camera, they would tell these unforgettable stories about near misses or things that they'd seen or experienced or worked on. And then when you pointed a camera at them, they would just say things like, safety is really important. We should all take safety really seriously. And you can begin to see, well, it would have been good to get them to tell the stories on camera. That was our first challenge. But equally, some of those things could have been brought to life with an animation. Such as, for example, the Gulf of Mexico incident, which I think everybody at BP needs to understand, so that those sorts of things don't happen again. And many of our organizations have incidents like that we don't want people to forget. And animation can be a great way, I guess, of bringing a really complex thing to life, as well as the interviewing perhaps some of the people who are involved in it. So you can see that there are applications, I think, that work really well.
Thank you very much. So we got another question from Damien. He said, if your manager told you to learn something from TikTok, would that change the dynamic? Would it change the user relationship to TikTok? Because I know for me, it's more recreational, but if you were suddenly like, yes, you're going to now use it for learning, I don't know.
Is this like, does everybody leave Facebook when the parents join? It's like, it's the kind of learning people go to TikTok and all of a sudden you have to invent a new social media platform. I think I did actually at one point ask the induction team. There's a lady called Lou Whaley, actually, if you're interested on TikTok, LOUWHALEY, who does marvelous kind of short sketches on the nature of kind of corporate culture and how to respond to kind of unreasonable requests, for example. And they are effectively training videos for millennials. It's all the stuff that they're missing out on now that they can't go to a physical office. So I said to the team, put them in the induction program. I think they thought I was nuts. But yes, I think I've had a play very unsuccessfully on TikTok, but I do think that we should curate where we can and enable people to contribute as well.
I actually picked up some good Excel tips off TikTok randomly when I was in the black hole of TikTok, found a random Excel video. So I quite like it. Miles said, what kind of measurements and metrics to help describe engagement levels?
Well, utilization. I think that there's a whole complex argument that Miles probably knows quite well that sits behind this, which is let's stop tracking completion, because that's just kind of compliance stuff. If something's useful, you'll see that in the usage. And so if you have, for example, kind of a resource like a checklist or a short video, it makes no sense to think of it as knowledge transfer necessarily, or of completion, of tracking completion. What you want to do, though, I think, is have a content strategy which demonstrably works because people are electing to use it. And this is certainly what Gemma and I worked on at BP, which is we shouldn't be dreaming up more mechanisms to force people to consume useless stuff, which I think is my worry. We should be dreaming up more useful stuff and seeing the impact in the elective usage. And we did, where we created really good stuff that was either very exciting or very useful. We had literally millions of hits at the end of the day. So I think that's a different perspective on it. But it would be one more familiar if you were thinking about marketing content. You'd be thinking about how many views, how many likes, how many referrals, how many comments, that sort of thing as it's got. So I think it's a slightly different space.
Thank you. Just going back to a question from Tom. So we talked about talking head videos earlier, realistic videos. What happens when people leave? Now, I've done this. I did a full photo shoot with people and I was like, actually, can we still use it when they leave?
All right, sign off. You need a form
Yeah.
says you're entitled to use this content, and then it's an editorial decision whether or not it's still relevant. Yeah, I mean, some of the stories from people who've left are still good. You know, people still learn things from them, but they may also date. People may not want to hear from an ex-CEO. So yeah, but as long as you've got
Especially
the
if
rights
they've run
to
off
use
with
them.
the bike lamp.
Yes,
To redo all that content.
Yeah. Or maybe not. You know, that's why they're no longer here.
Yeah. Okay, so let's have a look. So there's lots of questions. Sorry that we can't get to them all, but we're just about nearly done. So I'm just going to open up another poll, our final poll of the day, which is basically, do you want to know any more about Powtoon, about the Learning Network, or about Nick? If you'd like us to get in touch, if you just want to answer the poll on there, thank you very much. So any final thoughts from you, Dan, before we finish?
No, I think to a lot of the questions that have been posed, there are no black and white answers, and a lot of people, you know, going back to the long and short form video, what is classed as a short form video? Some people say 30 seconds, 3 minutes, 7 minutes. There is no black and white answer. It really does depend a lot of the content and the method, the distribution method, how you the type of content you create as well. All depends really on the industry you're in, the audience that you're trying to engage with. I'll make a touch on Powtoon, how regardless of who it is you're trying to engage with, and the type of content you want to create, whether it's animation, whether it's a 60-minute video or a 30-second explainer, whether it's a real life video, it's, you know, your CEO or one of your peers recording a video into the screen. I would encourage you to check out Powtoon, because it's something that's possible with Powtoon, and we cater for a lot of audiences, a lot of industries, a lot of use cases. So it's always nice to have that one platform that will do do it all for you. So I definitely recommend checking that out. Thank
you very much, Dan. Nick, final thoughts?
Well, yeah, you don't actually have to know more about any of those things. You can just close the box. I did check that with Kim. But if you want to know more about me, it's on shackletonconsulting.com, shackleton-consulting.com, and basically I help organizations who are trying to noodle their way through these sorts of questions.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm just going to end the poll. So thank you, everybody, for participating. Thank you very much for all your comments, all your questions. You guys are the ones that feed us when we're doing a webinar. So thank you so much. We hope to see you on another Learning Network webinar or another Powtoon webinar. And yeah, thank you. You can all go. Have a nice rest of your day.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, Kim.